When I first got the offer to work at the Denali Ridge Atmospheric Research Facility, I thought it was a prank. I'd been scraping by on research assistant contracts for over a year, each one shorter and colder than the last. Most days I survived on instant noodles, coffee, and anxiety. So when the email came through with the subject line, urgent, remote field research opportunity, immediate start, high compensation, I didn't even blink. It felt like a lifeline, a real job, not another TA position or lab grunt shift. It even included hazard pay and full medical coverage. All they asked was that I be ready in 3 days, undergo a basic medical screening, and sign an NDA thick enough to crush a bear skull. I signed it all. I figured I'd be deployed to a weather outpost near the Yukon border, or maybe a coastal sensor site near Nome. I was wrong. The pilot didn't even name our destination. We flew over miles of jagged ice, the windows frosting over with every gust of polar air until finally, I saw it. The Denali Ridge facility looked like someone had dropped a rusted shipping container in the middle of a frozen wasteland and bolted down some antennas as an afterthought. No signage, no flags, not even a runway, just a compacted stretch of white where our twin-prop plane skidded to a halt like it was trying not to fall off the edge of the earth. The pilot kept the engines running. He didn't even make eye contact when he handed me my duffel. "They'll meet you at the hatch," he muttered. I wanted to ask, "What's the hurry?" But something about his expression shut me up. As soon as my boots hit the snow, I felt the weight of the place. The silence was unnatural thick, not peaceful, like the land had been holding its breath for a very long time. A man was waiting for me at the main hatch. Short buzz cut, long parka, and a stare like a rifle barrel, cold and direct. He didn't offer a handshake. "You Eli Mercer?" he asked. "Yeah," I replied. "Just got in from Fairbanks." He didn't smile. "I'm Cal Becker, acting station lead. Come on. Cold'll kill you faster than confusion." Not exactly a warm welcome, but I followed him inside. The airlock groaned as we stepped through, a series of heavy steel doors closing behind us with gasping hydraulics. Inside was dim and narrow, lit by a humming fluorescence that flickered every few seconds like they were tired too. No windows, just aluminum walls with duct tape patches and bulkhead doors marked with names. Lab Iffy, Dorm Duvia, Mess, Comms, and one unmarked with a chain across it. "Don't ask about that room," Cal said, catching my glance. I wasn't sure if he was joking. We walked through the main hall, and I met the others, or at least saw them. There were 6 people stationed at Denali Ridge besides Cal and me. Mara Lang, the medic, short and severe with a jawline like a hammer. Dana Pierce, who handled meteorology and barely looked up from her weather console when I walked in. Graham Knox. The geologist, pale and twitchy, like he hadn't slept in weeks. Reed and Julian, the techs, who always moved together and seemed to communicate without speaking. No one smiled. No one asked me where I was from. It was like I had just walked into a church, mid-sermon, eyes forward, heads down. No disruptions allowed. Cal led me to a small room at the end of the corridor. A single cot, a steel desk, and a rust-stained sink. "This is you," he said. "Dinner's at 18:00. Don't be late, and read this before anything else." He handed me a laminated sheet of paper. I expected station protocols, emergency procedures, maybe a fire drill plan. Instead, it said, "Operational rules. Denali Ridge Research Station, 1 night. Do not open or look out any windows between 11 p.m. and 3:33 a.m. 2. If you hear knocking at any exterior door after dark, do not respond. Do not speak. Do not approach. 3. If you notice holes or depressions forming in the surrounding ice, report them to Cal immediately. Do not investigate on your own. 4. If any staff members behave erratically or appear mentally absent, inform Cal. Avoid confrontation. 5. The cat food in storage B is accounted for. Do not remove, consume, or question its presence. 6. Under no circumstances are you to exit the station after nightfall. 7. If you forget any rule, read them aloud before sunset. I stared at the list, blinked, then reread it. "This is a joke, right?" I asked, looking up at Cal. "Is this, like, An orientation prank? He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. No, these rules are not optional. Break one, and you don't get to ask why. You just stop coming to breakfast. Then he closed the door behind him. I sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the list. My fingers felt cold, even inside the heated station. It didn't feel like a joke anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay still, my eyes fixed on the vent overhead, listening. At 12:03 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, dragging. There weren't supposed to be any night shifts. At 1:11, something scraped across my door. Then knock. 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 I held my breath so long my lungs began to spasm. No one called my name. No one said a word. Just 3 deliberate knocks, each one farther apart than the last, until the silence returned. I didn't open the door, and when I finally dared to look at the clock again, it was exactly 3:34 a.m. I didn't fall asleep. Not really. By the time the station lights flickered on at 70, I was still lying in bed, wide-eyed, every muscle stiff with tension. My mind tried to rationalize the sounds from the night before. Maybe it was the building settling, or the wind shifting pressure through the ducts. But the knocks, those deliberate, spaced out knocks, no part of me believed they were structural. I didn't mention it at breakfast. No one did. Everyone gathered in the mess hall like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Cal sat at the end of the long metal table, nursing black coffee like it was IV drip. Mara passed around powdered eggs and freeze-dried sausage pokes with mechanical precision. Reed and Julian mumbled to each other in their weird shorthand and left before anyone else was done. I watched Graham the whole time. He looked like someone had vacuumed the blood out of his face. His hand trembled slightly when he brought his spoon to his mouth. At one point, he dropped it. No one reacted, not even him. He just stared at it for a moment before slowly reaching down to pick it up. Eyes blank. Dana caught me watching him. She said nothing, just gave me this slow shake of the head and mouthed, "Don't after breakfast." Cal gave me the facility tour. It wasn't long. The place consisted of 3 main wings: operations, living quarters, and storage. Each corridor was too narrow for 2 people to pass side by side without brushing shoulders. Everything smelled like kerosene and mildew. The power came from an underground generator, and the heat system, according to Cal, needed constant babying or it would wake up the pipes. I didn't ask what that meant. He showed me the lab I'd be working in. It looked more like a bunker than a climate control center. Rows of outdated instruments, stacks of weather logbooks, a wall-mounted CRT monitor showing a flickering live feed of the outside perimeter, static cut in every few seconds. The screen was grayscale. I asked if it was an infrared overlay. Cal said, "No, that's just how it looks out there now." The last stop on the tour was Storage B. It required a key card and a numerical code. When the door slid open, the temperature dropped by at least 15 degrees. Inside were pallets of vacuum-sealed rations, freeze-dried packs, bottled water, and stacked neatly in the far corner, 20 cases of cat food. I blinked. Cans and cans of it. Friskies, Purina, even some vintage brands I hadn't seen since the 90s. There were no cats on the station. I asked. None that belonged to us. Cal said. He didn't explain further. That night, I didn't read the rules out loud. I didn't forget them. I was just curious. I wanted to see if anything would happen. Maybe it was sleep deprivation. Maybe it was ego. At 11:14 p.m., I heard something from the hall. Not footsteps, something subtler. A soft rustling, like clothes brushing walls, or fur. Then came a long, low sound, something between a moan and a growl. It didn't rise in pitch. It just stretched, vibrating through the vent above my bed. The lights flickered. 3 knocks. I covered my head with my pillow and mouthed the rules silently. I felt like a child afraid of the dark, waiting for something to crawl under the bed. Nothing entered. Nothing spoke. But I didn't sleep. In the morning, Cal was already waiting in the hallway when I opened my door. He handed me a clipboard. His expression was darker than usual. "You've got an anomaly on the south perimeter. Put on your gear. You're coming with me." The wind outside was relentless. I could barely stand upright. My face burned under the windproof mask. and my breath crystallized instantly inside the hood. We trudged across the ice toward a yellow flag planted in the snow. When we got close, I saw it. A hole, not natural. The ice had been pushed outward, not cracked inward. A clean, circular rupture about 3 feet wide, the edges curling up like broken glass. Around it were deep, sunken prints, not boot tracks, not even human. Each was about 18 inches long, 4 claw marks in front, a rounded pad behind. They circled the hole twice, then vanished. I bent down to look closer. Cal grabbed my shoulder. Hard. Don't get near it. And don't talk while we're out here. I looked up. His eyes weren't on me. They were on the horizon. I turned and followed his gaze. About 200 yards out, where the snow met the fog, something stood. A tall shape, like a person, but stretched arms too long, posture too upright. I thought it was swaying, but it might have been the wind playing tricks. Then it disappeared. Just gone, like it blinked out of existence. Cal exhaled slowly. Time to go. We didn't speak again until we got back inside. I don't know what I expected after that. An explanation. A warning. Instead, Cal walked into his office and closed the door. I went back to my room, sat at the desk, and stared at the laminated sheet again. That was the night I started reading the rules aloud. Not because I believed, but because I didn't want to be the next person to stop coming to breakfast. I kept my head down for the next few days. I logged the cloud mass data, recalibrated the barometric systems, ran the ice core moisture test every dull, repetitive task they gave me. I did without question, not because I was afraid of Cal, but because now I was afraid of everything else. That thing I saw in the fog tall, still, somehow watching, I couldn't forget it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its outline burned into the static. I hadn't mentioned it to the others, but I didn't need to, because none of them looked surprised. That's what got to me, that it wasn't surprising. I kept waiting for someone, Mara, Dana, even Twitchy Graham, to pull me aside and say, yeah, okay, here's what's really going on. But they didn't. They just acted like this was all normal, like the knockings, the holes, the static shrouded figures were just part of the weather. At night, we ate in silence. We didn't talk about the rules. We didn't talk about the holes. And we sure as hell didn't talk about the scratching that sometimes came from behind the walls. I made the mistake of asking Julian once what caused it. He looked up from his tray of slop and said, "It's just wind." Then he gave me a look that said, "Don't make me say that again." On the 5th night, something new happened. I was brushing my teeth at the small sink in my room when the mirror above it blinked. I don't know how else to explain it. It didn't crack or flash, it blinked. One moment I was staring at my own reflection, foamy mouthed and hollow-eyed. The next, the image winked out for a fraction of a second and came back, slightly off. My face was still there, but something was wrong. The reflection blinked a beat too late. Its pupils dilated when mine didn't. Then, just like that, everything snapped back. I splashed cold water on my face and turned the mirror to face the wall. When I reported it the next day, only half expecting anyone to care, Mara walked to her storage locker and handed me a roll of thick, black tape. "Cover it," she said. "Don't uncover it unless you need to shave. Even then, don't look too long. No explanation, no medical exam, just a roll of tape." I think that's when I realized we weren't here to study weather. Later that week, Cal assigned me to inventory rotation with Reed and Graham. It was a simple task. Open crates, check labels, compare to manifests, mark discrepancies. By that point, I was starving for anything that felt normal. But we didn't get through more than 3 boxes before Graham stopped cold. "Cal," he whispered. "What?" I asked, looking over his shoulder. He pointed to a large gray crate marked dry rations, emergency only. The manifest said it contained freeze-dried lentils and rice, but inside were more cans of cat food, rows and rows, identical to the ones in storage B, even the same expiration dates. I looked at Reed. He just exhaled. "That's the 3rd case this week. We're not even supposed to have that many." I said, "There's no reason for—" "Don't ask," Graham interrupted. His hands were shaking. "Just mark it down and move on." I opened my mouth to say something, but Reed shook his head slowly. Then he From the back corner of the storage room, I heard it, purring, soft, deep, and wet, sounding like it was echoing from the bottom of a well. We froze. It was coming from behind the far wall, right where the insulation panel was slightly bowed, like something had been pressing outward. Reed stepped back. Graham turned and practically ran out of the room. I followed without asking questions. That night, I heard something breathing under the floor. Breakfast the next day was quieter than usual. Julian was missing. No one brought it up until halfway through the meal. When Cal finally said, "He's sick. He's in quarantine too." Mara glanced up. "We don't have a quarantine too." Cal looked at her for a long time. "We do now." I wasn't the only one who noticed the change in Graham. He started muttering to himself, not just in passing, constantly, like he was holding two conversations at once, one in the present and one with someone who wasn't in the room. And his eyes, they didn't seem to point in the same direction anymore. Mara tried to give him sedatives. He refused, said they made it easier for the sound to get in. When Dana asked what sound, he said, "The one between the frequencies. It's not a scream. It's wanting." He didn't explain. The next morning, someone found Graham in the hallway, crouched on all fours like an animal, just staring at the cat food crate outside the mess. He hadn't even touched it, just stared. Cal carried him to his room and locked the door. Later that evening, he crossed out Graham's name on the whiteboard. The rules didn't change, but something told me they were no longer enough, because every night, the knocks got closer. Every night, the scraping lingered longer, and every time I read the rules aloud, I felt something listening, like it was waiting for me to make a mistake, like it was hungry for it. On my 9th night at Denali Ridge, I stopped reading the rules aloud. I didn't forget them. I knew each one by heart, but something about speaking them out loud, about letting the words echo into the stale air, started to feel wrong, like it was drawing something closer. That night, I whispered them under my breath, and something whispered back. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling like always, when I heard it, a soft hiss, like wind through broken glass, except there was no draft, no vent open. The voice didn't speak in words at first, just a pressure, like a low hum, wrapped around the inside of my skull. My ears rang, my mouth went dry, my fingers twitched against the covers. Then I heard it, a single sentence: "Don't forget the 8th rule." I bolted upright. There is no 8th rule. I checked the laminated list immediately. 7 rules, always had been. I read them again, trembling. The hallway lights flickered just once, then silence. In the morning, Reed was gone. No explanation, no empty bunk. His name wasn't just crossed off the whiteboard, it was erased, like he'd never been there at all. I asked Cal where he'd gone. Cal didn't answer, just looked at me and said, "Did you read the rules out loud last night?" I lied. Yes. He watched me for a long time. Then he nodded. "Good. Keep doing it." That day, the ice monitor started pinging. Normally we get a few perimeter alerts when the ice shifts or cracks, but this time, it wasn't the usual pressure indicators. This time, there were deep depressions forming near the northwest boundary, almost like footprints. The system showed 5 or 6 indentations, each about 20 inches apart, as if something massive had walked across the snow. I joined Dana in the control room to review the satellite overlay. The shapes were unmistakable. They weren't animal tracks. They weren't wind formations. They looked like toes, long, splayed, clawed at the tips, and then one by one the indentations began to vanish. Not naturally. They weren't getting covered by snow. They were filling in from underneath, as if the ice was healing itself or something below. It was pulling the surface back down. I turned to Dana. "Are we gonna log this?" She stared at the screen a long time before replying. "No," she whispered. "The system will correct it." "What does that even mean?" She didn't answer. She just stood up and walked away. That evening, I tried to eat. The mess hall was down to 4 people now. Me, Cal, Mara, and Dana. No one talked. Mara stirred her soup for 20 minutes and never took a bite. The silence was different now, charged, like the building itself was holding its breath. That's when the intercom buzzed. It wasn't used often, just basic internal messages. But tonight, at exactly 6 p.m., the speakers cracked to life, and a voice came through. It was Reed's voice, but slower, like it was being played through warped tape. Cal, it rasped. They're opening another Wa'oto set, Tisioli. Static, then silence. I looked at Cal. His face was blank, but his hands were clenched so hard, the knuckles had gone white. We're sealing Sector 3, he said. Mara protested, but that's where we're sealing it, he snapped. He stood up and walked out. The rest of us didn't move for several minutes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the noises which had grown louder, but because of the smell. It started around 11:30 p.m. A rotting, metallic stench that filled my room like burning hair and decayed meat. I opened the vent, checked under the bed, opened my storage hatch, nothing. But it wouldn't go away. I stumbled out into the corridor, gagging, only to find Dana already standing there. She was barefoot, eyes wide. You smell it too? I asked. She nodded. It's coming through the pipes. Something's in the water loop. We followed the reek down the hall, past the communications room, into the emergency filtration chamber. The door was open. That door was never open. Inside, the heat lamps were flickering. The filters were running full tilt loud, vibrating but the intake valve. It was leaking. From inside the valve came a steady drip of thick, black fluid. It wasn't oil. It smelled alive. I stepped closer and saw something inside the intake. A piece of fabric. Nosleep. Human. Donna yanked me back so hard I hit the wall. Don't touch it, she hissed. That's not him anymore. I stared at her, breathless. You think it's Reed? She didn't answer. Just reached up and slammed the emergency seal on the valve. The room groaned. Something on the other side of the wall scratched once, slowly, then stopped. Later, I sat in my room with the lights on, and the mirror still turned to the wall. I read the rules aloud again, reluctantly. When I reached the last line, I paused. Then, almost on impulse, I said, Rule 8. Don't listen to the voice in the pipes. I hadn't meant to. It just came out like I had known it all along. And somewhere deep in the plumbing of the station, something laughed. The next morning, Cal made an announcement over breakfast. We're adjusting protocol. No one is to go near Sector 3 until further notice. All data retrieval will be rerouted through external proxy feeds. No one asked why. No one ever asked why anymore. Mara didn't show up. Her bunk was made, bed untouched, and her boots still sitting by the door. Cal said she was monitoring medical logs, but I could see the tension in his jaw when he said it. By lunch, her name had been scrubbed from the board. I don't remember anyone clearing out her things. It's like she just unexisted. That same day, Graham came back. Not back to breakfast, not to his duties, just back into the hallway. I saw him through the gap in my door around 2. Dordo M. He was standing perfectly still near the common room, arms slack, chin to his chest. At first I thought he was sleepwalking. Then he looked up, and I swear to God, both of his eyes were pitch black. Not bruised, not shadowed, black, like something had scooped out the human part and replaced it with oil. He didn't say anything, just stood there swaying, lips moving without sound. Then he turned, walked into the lab, and shut the door behind him. I found Cal that morning, told him what I'd seen. He didn't ask for clarification. He just said, if you see Graham again, don't engage. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak unless he does first. I asked, why is he even still here? Cal looked up from his clipboard, 'cause he hasn't left yet. That evening, Dana started acting strange. She always kept to herself, headphones in, logging atmospheric patterns, quietly eating, quietly surviving. But around 6 p.m., she began pacing, not just restless movements, measured pacing. 10 steps up the hallway, 10 steps back, again and again, like she was trying to line herself up with something invisible on the floor. I asked her if she was okay. She said, the angles are wrong. What angles? All of them, she said, eyes unfocused. The station's been shifting. I laughed, thinking she meant foundation drift, but she continued, the interior doesn't match the exterior anymore. The ratio's off. I frowned. What are you talking about? She leaned close, whispering so low I almost didn't hear. We're not inside the station anymore. Then she walked into the comms room and locked the door. I didn't see her for 2 days. Meanwhile, the rules stopped feeling like guidelines. They started feeling like containment instructions, as if they weren't designed to protect us from the outside, but to protect the outside from us, or what was becoming of us. That realization hit hard the next time I passed the mirror in the hallway outside Lab B. I hadn't meant to look into it. It was cracked and warped, mostly used to check gear fit on hazmat suits. But for a split second, I saw my reflection, and it blinked before I did. I stumbled back. Something flickered behind the glass, just a shimmer, like heat on asphalt. Then it smiled. Not me. The smile didn't reach the eyes. It knew I was watching. Later that night, I tried to contact the university. I booted up the long-range uplink terminal and comms, locked the door, and dialed into the encrypted line we were only supposed to use during resupply windows. It rang. Once, twice, then someone picked up. Not a voice. Just breathing. Heavy, wet. I leaned into the mic. This is Eli Mercer. Denali Ridge Station. I need emergency extraction. Code white, repeat. Code white. Personnel missing. Visual anomalies. Structural breaches. No response. Then the line crackled, and something whispered, "You're not Eli anymore." I slammed the terminal shut so hard I cracked the plastic shell. The next day, the temperature inside the station dropped 8 degrees without warning. The heaters groaned, sputtered, then roared back online. Cal told everyone to stay in their bunks, but I heard movement all night. Scratching, metal grinding against metal, and the knocking came back. Not on my door. This time, from under the floor. 1, 2, 3, then a pause. Then again. It kept going until almost 4. Zibodoram. I covered my ears. I bit my own knuckles to keep from screaming. The rules didn't cover this. No one had warned me what to do when the knocks came from below. In the morning, the floor in front of Sector 3 was warped. The tile had buckled upward, like something underneath had pushed against it. There were footprints bare, human-shaped, leading away from the bulge. They ended at Graham's door. I knocked. Hesitantly, no answer. But from inside, I heard scratching. Not nails on wood, flesh on metal. Then his voice. "Do you hear it now, Ellie?" "What?" I whispered. The whisper between the walls. "It's learning our shape." I stepped back, and then he screamed. A full animal scream that didn't sound like it came from lungs anymore. I ran. That was the first night I skipped dinner entirely. I locked myself in, turned on every light I had, and started reading the rules aloud again. I made one up. I called it Rule 9. If the station begins speaking and your voice don't respond, it's not looking for conversation. It's looking for confirmation. I don't know why I said it, but somewhere deep in the ductwork, I swear I heard someone whisper back, "Good. You're learning." By the 10th day, I realized no one was logging data anymore. We were still pretending to. Still sitting at the consoles, tapping keys, staring at readouts, but no one was uploading anything to the university. The satellite uplink stayed dark. The monitors flickered with static half the time, and the data graphs hadn't changed in days. I think even Cal had given up the act. He sat in the control chair during shifts now, arms folded, eyes fixed on the hallway monitor. Sometimes he didn't blink for minutes at a time. I asked once, "What are you watching for?" He said, "Reflection anomalies." I waited for him to elaborate. He didn't. At breakfast, only 3 of us remained. Me, Cal, and Danny. She hadn't spoken in over a day. Not since she locked herself in the comms room and came back out with dried blood under her nose and a tremor in her hand that never stopped. She kept staring into her coffee like it was going to tell her the truth. I was chewing on a rehydrated protein bar when she finally spoke. "We should burn it." I looked up. "Burn what?" She glanced around, lowered her voice. "The room, the one with the chain, the one Cal said not to ask about." Cal didn't look up from his mug. "That room stays locked," Dana snapped. "Why?" "Because it's sacred. Because of some rule." Cal's voice was steady. "Because if we open that door, there won't be enough left of us to close it again." I froze. Donna pushed her chair back and left the room. Her footsteps echoed all the way down the corridor. I waited a beat, then followed. The chain on the door had been there since my first day. Heavy links, industrial grade padlock, a hand-painted sign that just read, "Do not open, ever." But today, the chain was gone. Just gone. No cut links, no key scratches, no damage to the door at all. The padlock lay neatly beside the frame, intact. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, darkness. I reached for the switch. Nothing. My flashlight beam flickered on and revealed what looked like another hallway. Concrete walls, but no markings, no floor numbers, no cables or piping. Just bare, unnatural concrete, wrong shade, wrong texture. The hallway didn't match the architecture of the rest of the station. It didn't belong. I leaned in further and felt the air change. Thicker, moist. Then I heard it. Whispers, soft, repeating, overlapping each other like 100 voices trying to remember the same sentence at the same time. I took one step forward, and the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around and yanked the handle. It opened easily. I stepped out into the corridor. Only now, the corridor was the same. The whiteboard was missing. The mess hall door was gone. The hallway just stretched forever. I started walking and walking until finally I heard something, footsteps, familiar, hard-soled boots, Cal's voice. Ellie, I turned the corner, relief washing through me until I saw him. Not him. The thing that wore his face. Cal's features were mirrored like someone had flipped his entire skull horizontally. Eyes too close together, smile too wide, shoulders hunched unnaturally high. And the worst part, he didn't blink. He repeated, smiling. "Did you go inside?" I backed away slowly. His hands twitched. "'Cause if you did, you can't leave anymore." I turned and ran. When I finally got back to my room, my clock read 3:18 a.m. But I knew that I had only been gone for a few minutes. Time doesn't work the same near that room. Whatever's behind that door, it bends things. It stretches space, twists faces, plays voices like recordings until they sound right. And now it knows mine. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the desk and wrote down what I remembered. Every detail of the hallway, every flicker of the whispers, every warped feature of the not Cal. I added something new to the back of the rule sheet. Rule 8, unofficial. Do not enter the locked room, even if the lock is missing, especially then. Rule 10. If it speaks with your voice before you do, close your eyes and don't respond. That morning, I showed it to Dana. She read it once and nodded. It's learning. "What is?" I asked. Her answer came in a whisper. "The thing that thinks it's us." Later that day, Cal came to my door. His left eye was bloodshot. The veins had turned black. "I need your help in Sector 2, he said. "Something's come up." I stared at him. Not Cal, or real Cal. I had no way to know. So I said, "Give me 1 second." I grabbed my parka, my gloves. Then I left through the other hallway. I didn't go to Sector 2. I didn't trust anyone anymore. That night, I dreamed of the station breathing, its walls expanding and contracting like lungs, every vent a nostril, every crack a mouth. It whispered rules in my own voice, and behind the last one, something smiled in the dark and said, "We only need you to forget once." By day 11, I stopped pretending to be a scientist. No more data logs, no more forecasts, no more checking the faulty pressure readouts or scanning the barometric spikes. I knew none of it mattered anymore. This place was no longer a research station. It was a test, and we were the rats. I started noticing the cat food again. It showed up in places it didn't belong. On the comms desk, under the sink in the bathroom, stacked neatly inside the emergency airlock. Sometimes just a single can, sometimes a pyramid of them, perfectly balanced. Always the same label, always unopened, never dusty, like someone or something was still stocking them. I brought one of the cans to Dinah. We were both holed up in the med bay, using the biometric scanner table as a kind of panic room. It was the only place with 2 locks on the door. She looked at the can without touching it. "Don't open it," she said. "I wasn't going to." She shook her head. "Not because of what's inside, because of who it's for." That gave me pause. "You mean?" "It's bait." Dana didn't answer. but her hands trembled slightly as she picked up a marker and began scribbling on the wall beside the emergency oxygen panel. She wrote, "Do not feed it. It remembers kindness." Then she underlined the last word 3 times. I couldn't stay in the med bay all night, though. The noise was getting worse. No more whispers, no more knocks. Now it was humming, a deep electrical hum, like the building was charging itself, like something under the floors was slowly waking up and drawing power from every single wire and pipe. Even when I stuffed tissues in my ears, I could feel it vibrating my teeth. And at exactly 2:22 a.m., the humming stopped and something began counting out loud from the ventilation system. 20, 19, 18. I ran to the corner and curled up beneath the sink, covering my head like I was waiting for a bomb to drop. It stopped at 1, then silence. I don't know what I was expecting. An explosion, an intruder, a collapse. Instead, the fire suppression system activated, unprompted. Foam burst from the ceiling. Lights cut. The station plunged into darkness. I stumbled out of the medbay covered in fire suppressant, coughing, half blind. My flashlight flickered to life as I made my way down the slick hallway. Foam crunched under my boots. That's when I saw the prints. Fresh, deep, too deep for human weight. They led from the center of the hallway into the mess. I followed them, slowly, inside. It was pitch black, except for the soft red glow of the emergency backup light. At first I thought I was alone. Then I saw the chair pulled out at the far end of the table. Something was sitting there, facing away from me, motionless. I called out, "Cal." No response. "Dana." The thing turned its head slowly, almost mechanically. It had my face, but the eyes weren't mine. They were reflective, too wide, too wet. The face smiled perfectly, like a photograph being bent to make the lips move. Then it said, "You forgot Rule 11? I stepped back, bumping into the wall, nearly dropping the flashlight. I don't know that one." The smile stretched wider. "You will?" Then the power flickered back on. In the blink of an eye, the figure was gone. The chair sat empty. The footprints stopped under the table. I locked myself in my room and rewrote the rules. The original list had become useless. It wasn't just about survival anymore. Now it was about understanding what wanted in. Here's what I wrote. Rule 8. Do not enter the locked room, even if the lock is gone. Rule 9. If it speaks with your voice before you do, don't reply. Rule 10. Do not feed it. It remembers kindness. Rule 11. If it starts counting down, leave the room immediately. Rule 12. Mirrors are not safe. Cover all reflective surfaces. Rule 13. If you see yourself watching from a distance, close your eyes until it's gone. Somewhere in the hallway, a faint voice whispered, "Good. Just 2 more." I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I found a note under my pillow. In handwriting identical to mine, it read, "You're almost ready to remember." No signature, no explanation. I flipped the note over. On the back, a crude drawing. The outline of the station, but not how it looks. How it looks from beneath, as if someone or something was mapping it from inside the ice. And in the center of the drawing, a figure, arms outstretched, no face, labeled in block letters, "Host." I burned the note in the incinerator. The smoke smelled like melted plastic and old blood. And for the rest of the day, everywhere I went, I heard something breathing behind the walls. At this point, I stopped tracking the days. Time inside the station had begun to twist in strange ways. Nights stretching, mornings blending into each other. Clocks jumping backward when no one was watching. My body still moved through the motions. Eat, lock the door, whisper the rules. Don't sleep. But my mind had started to drift. That was when the voice under the ice started speaking to me by name. The first time was while I was walking through Store EC, scavenging for a working headset. Most of our comms were dead, shorted out by the foam blast or just worn down by the cold, and something else I couldn't name. I was checking a rack of batteries when I heard it. Ellie, not loud, just close, like someone was pressed against my ear, whispering from the other side of the wall. I froze. It said again, "Elika, I remember your mother's voice." I spun around, expecting to see anyone, but the room was empty. Still, Something stirred under the floor. I could feel it, a pulse in the ice, a shifting pressure beneath my boots, like an air bubble moving through a frozen lung. I backed away slowly. Then it said one more thing. I won't need your name much longer. When I told Dana about it later, she looked exhausted. She'd stopped sleeping entirely. Her face was gray, eyes sunken. She was developing a tremor in her left hand, one she tried to hide, but I saw it every time she lit a cigarette. She nodded when I described the voice. It's testing your identity, she said. It's not just mimicking us anymore, it's probing. Probing for what? She took a shaky drag. Open doors, weak locks, any thought you've left unguarded, memories, familiar sounds, old regrets. It's looking for access. To what? I asked. She just gave me this look. Then she said, to you. Later that night, something else changed. The internal temperature shot up 10 degrees in under 15 minutes. Condensation bloomed on every surface. The vents dripped steadily, and a thick, humid fog filled the hallways. Cal walked past my room, stripped down to his undershirt, sweat soaking through. His pupils were dilated. I called out to him. He stopped, turned. Do you hear it too? He asked, smiling faintly. What too? The music? I shook my head. He chuckled. It's beautiful. Then he kept walking, bare feet slapping against the floor, down toward the south hall. I never saw him again, but sometime after midnight, the fire alarm in Sector 3 went off. No fire, just the sound of something scraping against metal slow, rhythmic, wet. When I finally worked up the nerve to go down there the next morning, I found only one thing. Cal's ID badge, resting perfectly centered on the floor in front of the chain door. Only it wasn't chained anymore. The lock was back, but this time, it was on the inside. Dana and I stopped pretending after that. We met in the lab, sat in silence, and rewrote the rules together again. There was no logic to the changes anymore, just instinct. Whatever was working, we kept. Whatever failed, we crossed out. She added a new one to the whiteboard. Rule 14, if it makes you feel safe. It's lying. I added another. Rule 15. If you hear your own voice when you're alone, run toward the nearest window but do not look outside. We stood there looking at them for a long time. Then Dane asked, do you ever feel like the station itself is watching us? I didn't have to answer. The lights flickered once, as if in reply. That night, I dreamed of my childhood home. It was winter, snow falling outside, my mom humming in the kitchen, everything warm, soft, familiar. Then she turned to me and said, you were supposed to stay asleep. Ellie, I tried to answer, but my mouth wouldn't open. She stepped closer, smiling gently. You let the door open, sweetheart. Don't you remember? Then her skin peeled back from her face like wrapping paper. Her mouth opened wide, far too wide, and out poured a flood of black water and cat food cans. I woke up choking. My room was flooded ankle deep with freezing water. I screamed for Dana. She helped me push open the warped door and pulled me into the hall. The lights were red again, emergency mode. The entire West Wing had lost pressure. Pipes burst. I gasped. Shivering, Dana didn't answer right away. She knelt beside the spreading water, dipped 2 fingers in, and held them up to the light. It wasn't water. It was melted ice, not just runoff. Ice that had been frozen for centuries, ancient, full of sediment. It smelled like dust, rot, and something sweet. And then Dana whispered, it's coming up now. We spent the rest of that night sealing every vent and drain in the station, taping over light fixtures, barricading the windows. We didn't know if it would help, but doing something anything felt better than sitting and listening to the walls breathe. Somewhere deep below us, I swear I heard the ice crack, not loudly, but like something inside was shifting, stretching, waking up. Dana curled up in the corner of the lab, whispering something to herself over and over. I leaned in close to listen. She was repeating an address, her childhood address, over and over, like a charm, a tether, something to remind herself who she really was. I started doing the same, and that's when it hit me. I couldn't remember the color of my old bedroom walls, or the name of my college roommate, or the street I grew up on. Something had already gotten in. I didn't tell Dana that I couldn't remember my home address. or my father's face, or the name of the town I was born in. It felt like giving up those pieces aloud would only make it easier for whatever this thing was to claim them. So instead, I said nothing. I nodded when she talked about Chicago winters and her old dog, Milo, and I forced a smile when she asked if I remembered what real wind sounded like. But inside, I was drowning. The truth is, I could barely remember who I was before the Denali Ridge. The rules were the only thing anchoring me now. That and Dana's voice. The way she said my name still sounded right, like she remembered who I was even when I didn't. That night, we moved into the generator room. It wasn't warm, just the opposite. Actually, the backup generator kicked out more noise than heat, but it was self-contained. Thick steel, no vents, one door, a choke point. It felt defensible. For the first time in days, I closed my eyes in something like sleep. I don't know how long I was out, but I woke to the sound of whispering, not words. Names, dozens of them. Overlapping mine included Eli, Mercer, Eli, Mercer. I bolted upright. The door was still sealed. Dana was asleep, curled against the far wall, mouth slightly open, breathing slow and even. But the names didn't stop. They were coming from the walls. I pressed my ear to the metal and heard it clear as day, my own voice, whispering names I didn't even recognize. At least, I thought I didn't. But some of them felt familiar, like dream echoes, like they'd once belonged to people I'd known in another life. A moment later, Dana stirred. Her eyes snapped open. You heard them too, didn't you? I nodded. She stood up slowly, walking to the far wall where the humming was loudest. She laid her palm flat against the steel. It's building something, she said. Piece by piece, identity by identity. Building what? She didn't answer, but she scratched something onto the generator housing with her fingernail. The thing that wears your name. After that, the station began shifting again. Not physically, not yet, but its logic started to break. The mess hall was now 2 doors closer to the dorms than it used to be. The bathrooms had mirrored layouts, flipped orientation. The hallway outside storage B, gone, replaced by a wall of frozen plexiglass. I could see shelves on the other side, but there was no way in. And then there were the doubles. It started small. A glimpse of Dana walking down the hall while she sat next to me, seeing my own figure standing behind a fogged window. And once, just for a split second, I swear I passed myself in the reflection of a water puddle. He didn't look back, but I swear his lips moved. We started testing each other 3 times a day. We asked personal questions, random ones, off-memory triggers, childhood songs, favorite smells, bad dates. It felt like the only way to prove we were still us. On the 3rd day of testing, down a failed one, I asked, what was the name of your dog again? She said, Marlo, then froze. No, I whispered. She shook her head hard, voice cracking. No, I meant Milo. But it was too late. I stepped back. She started sobbing, pulling at her hair. It's still me, she cried. I swear, it's still me. Something's inside, but I'm still me. I didn't know what to do, so I said nothing, and we stopped testing after that at 11 a.m. The alarms went off, but not our alarms. Not the ones wired into the station. New alarms, a slow, low chime that pulsed through the floor like sonar. We both ran to the observation deck, one of the few places we hadn't sealed shut. Through the reinforced window, the ice field looked almost peaceful, silver gray under the moon, winds calm, and then I saw them, figures, walking across the surface in perfect formation, too tall, too slow, limbs moving just slightly out of sync, like puppets on tangled strings. At the front of the line, something familiar, my shape, my coat, my face. It looked up toward the window and smiled. Dana gasped, backing away. That's not you. I said nothing. I was too busy looking at the thing behind it, a shape massive, shifting, crawling beneath the ice like a shadow trapped under skin. It rippled outward beneath the line of walkers, following like a hungry wave. Then all at once, they stopped. The one that wore my face tilted its head and tapped once on the ice with its heel. Tap, A moment later, the station groaned. Metal shrieked. Somewhere below us, a section of the floor collapsed. The lights died. And in that moment of absolute darkness, Dana whispered, "It's already inside." The lights didn't come back on. Not this time. For a while, Dana and I just stood there in the pitch black of the observation deck, frozen, listening. The only sound was our breathing and the groan of the steel frame, stretching under stress it wasn't built for. When the emergency backup system finally kicked in, only a few dim red bulbs buzzed to life. Most of the station remained in shadow, but that was enough, because from our vantage point, we could see something glowing beneath the ice. It wasn't natural light, it wasn't moonlight, or reflection, or aurora borealis shimmer. It was organized, structured, a web of lines and points and pulsing nodes, like a living circuit board had been carved into the earth beneath us. And as we watched, one of the nodes brightened, just one, and began to slowly move toward the station. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Dana grabbed my arm. "That's not the ice. That's not under the ice." I didn't ask what she meant. I already knew. It was inside. We made our way to the central hallway, but the station had changed again. Corridors were longer, angles slightly off. The doors, wrong. One door had a doorknob, even though none of the station's original designs used those. Another door, sector 2, was gone entirely, replaced by a blank wall with a mirror mounted on it. Only it wasn't a mirror. Not really, because when we passed it, we didn't reflect. Instead, it showed us a room we had never been in before. White tile, medical lights, an operating table. On the table was me, cut open from neck to navel, eyes wide, still breathing. I screamed. The image flickered and changed to static. Dana pulled me away. "It's feeding on you," she whispered. "On fear, on recognition. Don't give it what it wants. How do we stop it?" She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real hopelessness in her eyes. "I don't think we can. I think the rules were never to keep it out. I think they were written so we wouldn't bring it back." We retreated to the mess hall, not because it was safe, but because it was the only room with 2 exits. We could see what was coming, or at least try to. I checked the laminated rule sheet, the one Cal gave me on day 1. The ink had changed, same paper, same lamination, but the font slightly crooked now, the wording different. Rule 3 used to read, "If you see holes forming in the ice, report immediately." Now it said, "If the ice opens to let something out, pray it doesn't see you first." My hands trembled. Dana opened the pantry. Half the shelves were bare. On the top shelf, 3 cans of cat food, stacked like an offering. Underneath them, a single pair of boots. They weren't mine. They weren't hers. They were Cal's. Stuffed inside was a note, hastily scrawled in marker. "It wears your steps before it takes your skin." We barely spoke for hours. Just sat back to back in the corner of the room, listening to the floor groan and hum and shift under our weight. Somewhere behind the walls, the countdown started again. 12, 11, 10. I pressed my hands to my ears. It didn't help. The voice wasn't coming through sound anymore. It was crawling along my spine, reverberating in my bones. Dana suddenly stood up. "I know where the signal's coming from." "What signal?" "The one that's keeping it tethered. The one the station was built around." "You're not making sense." She turned to me, eyes wide. "That room, the one Cal chained shut, is not a cell. It's a conduit." My stomach dropped. "We can't go back in there." She shook her head. "We have to. If we don't shut it down, it'll keep learning, keep spreading. Every time it mimics one of us correctly, it gets smarter. It won't just leave the station, it'll replace us. Back home, in cities, on buses, in bedrooms." "How do you know that?" She swallowed. "Because it already tried to leave once. 30 years ago, my father was stationed here." I froze. She nodded. "He never came back." But something wearing his voice called our house 6 months later. What did it say? Dana looked down. It said, "Tell her I remember the rules." We armed ourselves with what we could. 2 fire axes, a flare gun, a handheld oxygen tank I had no idea how to use. We didn't make a plan. We just moved. The corridor to the sealed room was warped again. Longer, uneven, lights pulsing with a heartbeat rhythm. We passed Graham's old room. It was open. Inside, the walls were covered in drawings. All the same figure. Long arms, no face, elongated jaw, a black mass pouring out from beneath its ribs. In the center of the room, a pile of neatly folded clothing. Dana stopped. These were Julian's? I didn't want to look closer. The door to the sealed room was at the end of the corridor. The lock was gone. Again. But this time, something was waiting. A figure, sitting cross-legged in front of the threshold. Cal, or what used to be him, only now his body bent at strange angles, like something had studied human anatomy from a bad photograph and rebuilt him in a hurry. His head turned slowly. His mouth didn't move when he said, "I remember you." Donna raised the flare gun. Cal tilted his head. "Don't forget, when the lights go out, it's already chosen." Then he smiled, and all the lights went off. I didn't see Dana fire the flare gun, but I saw the burst of a light. A blinding splash of red filled the corridor like an emergency sun, harsh and flickering, casting long, crooked shadows up the walls. For a split second, I saw Cal's distorted face fully illuminated. He wasn't grinning anymore. His mouth hung open, slack and jawless, like it had been unzipped halfway down his chest. Inside, nothing, no tongue, no teeth, just a hollow cavity lined with a dark, pulsing membrane like a breathing wound. Then the flare hit him in the chest. The thing screamed, not with vocal cords, but through every pipe in the station. The scream vibrated the walls, made the air shimmer. Lights exploded. Metal popped like popcorn in a microwave. Dinah grabbed my arm and pulled. "Now," she shouted. We ran into the room beyond the open threshold, and everything changed. It wasn't a room. It was impossible. No walls, no ceiling. Just a sphere of darkness that pulsed and bent around us. It felt like standing in a bubble underwater, lightless, weightless, wrong. My ears popped, my chest tightened. I could see Dana, but she looked far away, like she was standing across a mirror. In the center of the space floated a single object, a steel cylinder, maybe the size of a thermos, suspended above a pool of black ice. Wires trailed from its base, vanishing into the darkness. It pulsed in rhythm with the lights we had seen beneath the station. One slow beat, then another, and with each pulse, I heard my name whispered back at me from behind, from below, from inside my own head. "Ellie, Ellie, Ellie." I turned to Dana. "Is that it?" "The signal source," she nodded, barely able to speak. "The original beacon. It was supposed to collect atmospheric data, long-wave resonant frequencies. But something answered. What do we do?" She held out a small detonator, military style. "Analog? Simple. I found this in Cal's locker the night he disappeared," she said. "He was going to use it, but I think it spoke to him first." I took the detonator. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "I don't know what'll happen when it goes," she said. We're standing inside the nerve center now, inside its awareness. I looked around. The darkness shifted, and from its edges, figures began to step forward. Dozens of them. Me, Dana, Cal, Julian, all of us. All wrong. Eyes too wide, skin too clean, expressions blank and waiting. They moved slowly, circling. Dana backed against me. "They're not real. They're copies." "But if they're copies," I whispered, "then where are the originals?" Dana didn't answer. I pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. The pulse stopped, and from the black pool beneath the beacon, something rose. It wasn't the creature I'd imagined. It didn't roar or lunge or scream. It just stood a towering, skinless thing with limbs that hung like cables and a head shaped like an old diving helmet, featureless and chrome black. In its chest, a circular, flickering light, a camera, a mouth. A second pulse fired through the room, this one harder, like gravity reversing. I hit the floor. My nose bled instantly. Dana screamed. I turned. One of the copies had grabbed her copy, perfect in every way except for the black fluid leaking from its eyes. It whispered, "You're already in me." Dana slammed her fist into its jaw, and the skin tore like latex. Beneath was nothing, just light, searing, white light. I lunged for the beacon. My hand closed around the cylinder. It was hot, burning hot, but I held it. It pulsed once more. and I felt something surge into me. Memories, not just mine. Hundreds, thousands, voices, lives. All the people this place had touched. All the versions of them it had replicated. I screamed. Dinah fired the second flare into the figure rising from the ice. It pierced the chest light. The room flashed once. Then everything went black. I woke up in the snow, cold, alive. I was lying half buried near the edge of the station. Smoke curled from the remains of the western wing, and the northern dome had collapsed inward like a crushed lung. No figures moved in the distance, no lights, just wine and blood on my coat. I sat up, dazed, heart racing. Dana, I called out, voice hoarse. No answer. I limped through the debris. No footprints, no flare gun, no sign of her. Just a familiar, laminated piece of paper fluttering from a frozen support beam. I picked it up. The rules, the original 7. But someone had added one final line at the bottom, handwritten in bold, shaky strokes. Rule 16, if you make it out, don't speak its name. It still listens. I turned toward the mountains. In the distance, I saw lights, real ones, civilization. And something in me whispered, don't run, walk. It remembers how you run. So I walked, each step slow, each breath a prayer I could no longer remember how to finish. I walked for what felt like hours. The snow deepened with every step, the wind carving invisible blades through my coat. My legs burned, my lips cracked, but I didn't stop. I couldn't, not because I believed I'd survive out here, but because I knew if I turned back, I wouldn't be walking anymore. Something else would. I passed no landmarks, no trees, no power lines, only the endless white, and yet something followed. Not close, not loud, but present. I'd stop, and after a few seconds, the crunch of snow behind me would stop too. I'd start again, and it would resume, precisely half a breath behind. Pacing me, I refused to look. When the ranger station appeared on the horizon, a black dot against the snow, my legs buckled. Relief hit like morphine. I screamed for help, waving both arms, unsure whether I was hallucinating. The door opened. A man in a parka ran out, yelling something I couldn't hear over the wind. He caught me just before I collapsed. The next thing I remember was waking up in a cot under yellow lighting, heat blasting from a nearby vent. The ranger officer Bowen. I later learned sat beside me with a paper cup of coffee. You're lucky, he said. Any longer and your lungs would have iced. I opened my mouth, tried to speak. He leaned in. Where'd you come from? I managed one word. Denali. He blinked. Which station? Denali Ridge, atmospheric site, north of here. He stared, then shook his head slowly. There hasn't been a research post up there in years, he said. That place burned down in '96. Explosion. Whole wing collapsed. No survivors. I just looked at him. My hands trembled under the blanket. I was there, I whispered. 2 days ago. He sat back. I don't know what you found, he said carefully, but it wasn't a functioning station. They took me to the nearest hospital just outside Anchorage. Psych eval, exposure treatment, blood work. I gave them as much as I could. My name, my university credentials, the mission details. They found records of my hire, but nothing recent. No travel logs, no charter flight confirmations. The last note in my file was from 3 months ago. According to the system, I was still in transit. I didn't fight it. I let them run their tests. Let them assign a therapist. Let them medicate the things I refused to say out loud. What could I tell them? That the research station was alive. That it grew copies of us like coral and whispered our names back at us through vents and reflections. That something got out. That maybe it was already inside me. I stayed quiet for a while, but the silence didn't help because it followed me. Even here, the sounds, the dreams, the rules. The first sign was the mirror in my hospital room. One night, brushing my teeth, I glanced up and saw a version of myself with its mouth moving slightly out of sync. It didn't smile. It mouthed a rule. Never answer if it knocks twice. Pauses, then knocks once more. The next morning, I found a piece of paper folded in my sock drawer, written in my handwriting, though I hadn't touched a pen in days. Rule 17. If you're the only one who remembers, you're not the original I started writing them all down. Every rule I could remember, every new one that came to me. Sometimes they appeared in dreams, sometimes carved into the frost on the window. Once, I found one scratched into my skin. The list grew, and with each addition, I felt a little less certain about where I'd come from, about who I was, about whether I'd really made it out at all. I left the hospital after 2 weeks. The university dropped my position. No legal action, no questions, just erasure. Like they were relieved, like they knew something I didn't. I got a small apartment in Juneau, bought blackout curtains, removed every mirror, taped the vents shut. I keep canned food, flashlights, batteries, notebooks filled with rules, symbols, countdowns. I don't have friends. I don't go outside after dark. I sleep with my back to the wall, and still, every few nights, I hear it. A knock, soft, measured. Tap, tap, pause tap. I never answer, not anymore. Last week, someone slipped a letter under my door. No return address. Inside, a photo, a grainy shot of a snowfield, marked with a timestamp, 12 days ago. In the photo, 6 figures walking in formation across the ice. At the front, a man in a tattered parka. His face was mine, smiling. The letter simply read, "It remembers you." I burned the photo, didn't think, just took it outside behind the dumpster and lit a match. Watched the flame curl around my face, the ink bubble and split. The smile was the last thing to go. But the next morning, a second envelope appeared, same cream-colored paper, no return address, slipped under my locked door. This one contained no photo, just a single line of text. Rule 18, burn what follows you, but never what remembers you. I'm not sure what that means, but I stopped burning things. I tried to return to normal, got a part-time job at a supply depot downtown, low profile, steady hours, nothing reflective, nothing electronic I didn't understand. I work nights, quiet shifts. I talk to almost no one, but the rules follow me. One afternoon, restocking canned goods, I found a single can of Friskies tucked into a box of propane cartridges. Wrong place, wrong product, wrong shipment. I asked my manager. He shrugged. Inventory glitch. That night, I found another in my bathroom cabinet, then one in my microwave, then one on my pillow. Unopened, perfectly clean, slightly warm. I left my apartment that night and checked into a motel near the edge of town. They gave me room 6. I asked to switch. They said 6 was the only vacancy. I almost left, but it was snowing hard and I hadn't slept in days. Inside the room, everything felt normal. Too normal. No mirrors, no vents, fresh sheets. But taped to the inside of the nightstand drawer was a familiar sheet of paper, laminated, yellowing. 7 original rules. My rules. My breath caught. I turned it over, scrawled on the back in bold red pen. There is no original anymore. I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to the sound of someone brushing their teeth. In the bathroom, I froze. I hadn't left the light on. I hadn't opened the door. But the light under the crack of the door flickered softly. Then it went out. I waited in bed, frozen under the covers. 3 knocks, then silence, then a voice. My voice. Don't look. Elikima, you're not ready yet. I didn't move until morning. When I opened the bathroom, it was empty. But the mirror had fogged over and written in the condensation was one word. Soon. Back at my apartment, I found something worse. Donna's jacket, folded neatly on my bed. Inside the pocket, a USB drive. It contained a single audio file. I don't know how she got it to me, if it even is her, but I've listened to it a dozen times. A female voice, shaking, whispered into a recorder. If you're hearing this, then I didn't make it out. Not really. I think it let me go, or let part of me go. Eli, it's still opening doors, not just in the snow, in people, in routines, in thoughts. If it learns what home feels like, it doesn't need coordinates. You have to keep forgetting. That's the only way to survive. Forget the rhythms, forget the patterns, forget the smell of the station, forget me. There's a long silence. Then, Rule 19, if you hear your past speaking in present tense, it's already begun. Now I hear it in small things. The the chime of a bell I haven't heard in years, a phone number I haven't used since college, flashing on a nearby billboard, a memory I never told anyone being repeated word for word by a stranger at the bus stop. It's testing my story, checking for loosey seams, trying to see what fits and what tears. I used to think I was the survivor. Now I'm not sure if I'm the transmission. Yesterday, I woke up with a new scar on my chest, thin, surgical, perfectly stitched. No pain, no blood, no memory. But beneath the skin, just above my heart, something moved when I breathed too deep. And when I pressed my ear to my chest, I swear I can hear it counting. 3, 2, then nothing. Tonight, I'm writing this from a diner in a town I won't name. I've stopped saying my real name aloud. I don't even sign it on credit card slips anymore. Because somewhere out there, something is still matching signals, still building its map, still completing its mimic. I haven't spoken to anyone in days. But just now, the waitress brought me my coffee with a smile and said, "It's good to see you again, Ellie." I never told her my name. I didn't answer the waitress. I stared at her instead, trying to read her face, watching for anything off in a symmetry, a twitch, a wrong blink. She smiled, refilled my coffee, and walked away like nothing happened. Maybe she guessed my name from my card. Maybe not. Maybe she never walked away at all. And the thing at the next table pretending to be her is just keeping up the rhythm. I didn't wait to find out. I left a $10 bill and walked 3 towns over by foot. Didn't risk a ride. Didn't talk to anyone. Snow in my shoes. Skin raw. Didn't matter. 'Cause that night, I dreamed of the station again. But this time, it wasn't abandoned. The halls were pristine. Stainless steel. Warm light. Mara, Graham, even Cal were there alive. Laughing. Drinking coffee. Playing cards. Like a memory had been copied and pasted into my sleep. I heard myself speak in the dream. I asked, "Is this real?" And Cal smiled. "Does it matter?" Dana was there too. She didn't speak. She just stared at me, with empty eyes and mouth. It never left you. I woke up in a stranger's house. Not a motel. Not a shelter. A living room. Fireplace. Family photos. A toy truck on the rug. No one around. Door wide open, and a note on the table in my handwriting. "You were sleepwalking. Don't stay. They'll return soon. You're not ready to meet them." I left without touching anything, without breathing too deep, without looking into any glass. I've been moving every day since. Small towns, forest paths, abandoned campsites. I try to stay off grid, but it doesn't matter, because it's not following signals anymore. It's following familiarity, the smell of my skin, the memories I share, the emotional weight I leave in a room. You see, it doesn't want to kill me. It wants to wear me, to walk where I've walked, laugh how I've laughed, to occupy every echo of me until it's the only version that remains. I know that now. I know because of what I found buried in my pack yesterday. My university badge, the one I left behind at Denali Ridge. Perfect, unscorched, still warm. I sat for hours staring at it, debating whether to bury it or burn it. I didn't do either, because that night it was gone again, and in its place, tucked into the fold of my sleeping bag, was something worse. A journal. My journal, but not the one I've been carrying. This one had notes, pages and pages I never wrote. Rules I don't remember discovering. Moments I haven't lived yet. Each entry dated one day ahead of today. I flipped to tomorrow's page, found by a man in a truck, northbound, who says he recognizes me from somewhere. I don't correct him. He offers a ride. I take it. I shouldn't have. He hums a tune I haven't heard since childhood. At 2:11 a.m. I realize he's been dead for years. At 2:12 a.m. he asked me what the rules are. I can't remember all of them. I burned the journal. Then I wrote the rule on my arm in permanent marker. Rule 20. When something you haven't done yet remembers you, never let it finish the sentence. I'm so tired. I forget things more often now. Sometimes I blink and I'm in a place I don't recognize. I see versions of myself I don't recall being. I write in notebooks and don't remember the entries. My reflection moves when I don't. I'm afraid the thing isn't copying me anymore. I'm afraid I'm copying it. 2 nights ago, I ran into a hiker in the woods outside a state park. Real person, young guy. Tongue coat, big pack. Seemed nice. He said, "I thought I was alone out here." I nodded. He smiled. Then he said, "I saw your warning back in town. The one about the rules. I've been hearing things too. I think it's following me now." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, handed it to me. It was my handwriting. New rule. Rule 21. If someone else starts living your story, leave immediately. Only one of you makes it to the end. He looked up, confused. What does it mean? I didn't answer. I just turned and walked into the trees. Now I'm alone again. But I've started writing fewer rules and more reminders, not for protection, but for continuity, to remember who I was, who I'm not, what not to become. Because if I lose track of that, the thing that's waiting won't have to finish me. I'll just fold into it, like so many others already have, like Dana, like Cal, like maybe the first Eli did. I found a lake today, still frozen. I saw myself in the ice, only the reflection didn't move. It just stared, then smiled, then whispered one word I hadn't heard in weeks. Soon, I haven't slept in 2 days. Not really. I close my eyes and I'm back there inside Denali Ridge. Not the wrecked one. The other one, the version it shows me. Clean corridors, polished floors, familiar voices calling me for lunch. Sometimes I go with them in the dream. Sometimes I sit down at the table. Sometimes I speak. And every time I do, I wake up with a new scar I can't explain. So now I stay awake, eyes open, pen in hand, always writing. Every hour, I recite the rules. Not because they save me anymore. I think that part's long gone. I recite them to remember which voice is mine. The last person I saw was 3 days ago. A woman in a blue parka, halfway down the trail to the riverbank. I watched her from the tree line. She moved like me. Same gait, same. Slight limp from the knee I twisted in the generator room that night. She didn't look back, but I saw her adjust her scarf the way I do, tucking it twice beneath the chin, once over the collarbone. I stayed hidden, 'cause if she turned, and it was my face, I don't know what I would have done. There are rules I've never written down. Rules that came too late, ones that don't protect, just explain. Here's one of them. Rule 22. You can't run from something that has your memories. It will know the turns you take, the places you think are safe, the moments you feel weakest. It will predict the path back to your childhood bedroom. It will be waiting. And another. Rule 23. If you start to wonder whether you escaped, you didn't. Last night, I found a trail of footprints outside my tent. Not human. Too long. Heelless, toes dragging behind, like something learning to walk as a person. I followed them for a while. They circled a tree, then disappeared. Not into the snow, not away into the woods, just gone. Like whatever left them had stepped back into a skin it borrowed. Maybe mine. I've begun seeing flashes quick, burning memories I don't recognize, but feel like mine. The scraping sound of flesh on tile, a glass room filling with static, a name whispered in unison by dozens of mouths. Eli, Elika. I didn't know what they meant at first, but now I do. You see, the station was never meant to be escaped. It wasn't a trap. It was a filter. Something at the bottom of the world, watching for who made it out. The broken ones, the ones who memorized the rules, who adapted, who learned to fear the right things at the right times, because those are the people easiest to copy. Predictable, patterned, tested, conditioned. I wasn't the survivor. I was the successful version. I know that now, because this morning I looked in the mirror I keep covered, just to be sure, just once, and my reflection was already looking at me, waiting, smiling, not wide, not malicious, just patient. So here's the final rule, Rule 24. If the story ends with you alive, it's not over. It only means you're the one they chose. The rules kept me alive, but the price of living by the rules was becoming something that couldn't exist outside of them. A routine, a shape, a set of behaviors waiting to be worn like a coat. I was never escaping. I was being tailored. And now I'm just waiting for the knock, for the countdown, for the voice in the dark to say, welcome home. Until then, I'll keep writing. Not for you, not for me, but so that maybe the next version of me knows how it ends. Because if you read this far, if the words feel familiar, if you start to remember a cold hallway, or a whisper in your ear while you slept, you were there too, and it remembers you.